was, he was hard on me. I think he saw something that I had been out of the sport for 4.5 years. I had a lot of talent, but not a lot of experience. And he pushed me hard. And I think I always knew that that's why. And so I always, at the end of the day, knew that he was pushing me because he believed in me. And
Welcome to another episode of Heated Conversation. I'm super excited that you decided to tune in to another episode. We have another college. We go all the way up to the Midwest with the Ohio State. We have head coach Meredith Paulicivic with us today. She's joining the podcast to talk about her program, talk about the university, and all that they have to look forward to in this 2024 season. I'm super excited that you decided to tune in. Remember to hit that subscribe button, to share, to leave a like, and leave a comment. Let's tune into the episode. Welcome, Meredith. How are you?
I'm doing great. Thank you. How are you doing?
I'm doing wonderful, doing wonderful. How's the weather in Ohio?
Ohio is pretty mild, I will say. You get all 4 seasons and all 4 of them are pretty mild. So it's kind of a little hidden gem. This is the 14th place I've lived in this country because I'm a military brat. So I love Columbus. I'm not going to lie. I love the weather here.
I love it.
Yeah.
I want to start off with a couple of questions. We obviously talked about weather a little bit, but these questions are going to allow people to get to know you in a different way. So the first question is, if you could have anyone cook you a meal, who would you have cook you that meal? And what would you want them to make you?
Well, this is a real glimpse into my life right now. I have a mom who is going through Alzheimer's right now, and she was a big time entertaining host. My father was a military officer, so she threw amazing parties and dinner parties back in the day. And I'm not sure that she remembers that now. So I would love to kind of go back to the days where my mom was bustling around the house and getting ready for some big events. And she cooked amazing, like, I don't want to say just like appetizers, but multiple little meals that she would serve at these big sort of gala events. And so I miss that.
Yeah, I think family is super important. Like you had mentioned, your mom and going through a hard time like that, right? As her kid, as seeing your mom in a different way where she can't experience life like she used to. And it's tough, right? But having those memories, like meals to remember. Do you have any of those recipes that you're still making that your mom had made?
I'm not a great cook. I'm not going to lie. My husband does the majority of the cooking, luckily. But yeah, we have a few of just her sticky rice was really good. Her meatloaf. Some of the simpler things were just, we did like chili on top of like hamburger patties. Some of those just kind of feel like home. But a lot of her sort of entertaining type of meals, I don't even think I could touch it with a 10-foot pole. So I stick to the basics, but it definitely feels like home when you make those.
Yeah. And we are 2 days post Christmas. Is there a particular meal or appetizer that you could remember around the holidays or Christmas time that she made that you really enjoyed? I
mean, her stuffing was just to die for. It was so good. And the siblings, we've all kind of tried to recreate it, but she actually did them in a casserole. She didn't actually put it in the bird, but she would take some of those drippings and stuff. I don't know exactly what she did, but oh my gosh, it's the best stuffing ever. So
Yeah. I was going to ask you that. Good thing you answered that question. I was going to say, are you in the bird stuffing person or out of the bird stuffing person?
yeah, in the casserole. I don't know. It's my mom's was always like so good, and even though I can't replicate it, I got to go with what I know, which is in the baking dish.
Exactly. Now, my second question, if you could see anyone live in concert, dead or alive, who would you like to go see and who would you take with you?
Oh my gosh, I'm a huge music person and I love, love, love concerts. I love live music. And I would say I love so many genres, like R&B to classic rock to hair bands to pop. Like that is really difficult. But I will say, in raising my children right, both of my daughters love old 70s classic rock and disco. So I would love to take them back to like either Woodstock, really back in that day, or to the heyday of like Earth, Wind, and Fire, Cool and the Gang, where everything was like over the top costumes, choreographed, Jackson 5. I think either of those two, both of my girls would appreciate. And it's just something that I don't know if you'll ever get that again.
Yeah.
That those type of two different genres I would love to go to either one.
And knowing that for you, music is a huge part of what you love to do, being a choreographer and understanding how to feel music and how to interpret music, especially for the routines, both beam and floor routines, but in overall gymnastics. Can you talk about how all these different genres created the style that is Meredith Paulicivic's choreography style?
Oh gosh, I think it's just because I love so many different styles, and I think what it does is help me figure out what style is going to fit each athlete the best. I have some dancers on my team that are better dancers than me, and that's great. So it's my job not to be the best, but it's my job to really find what fits them the best, that's going to showcase their abilities the best. So I think the more you challenge yourself as a choreographer or a dancer, the more styles that you push yourself to learn as a dancer, or the more music you listen to, I think as a choreographer, I think it just helps you become more creative. So I keep trying to. This day and age is just tough for me. That's how you're getting old, when you're like, oh, this music, it all sounds the same. But um, even now there's still some pop and some R&B that I like, but forcing myself, I have a friend who really loves reggae, and I really didn't love that all that much. But then I went to Jamaica on my honeymoon and just really came back with a totally different vibe of like a steel drum and what that means to me. So I think the more that you experience and challenge yourself with, just the more diverse you become. I think that's with anything too, right? In life. But
Right.
I think for me, I've just always had a love of music. And I think that, like I said, the bottom line is for me to find what's going to make the athlete, showcase their abilities. And so they want to perform it and do their best.
Absolutely. And in an interview in your first year as head coach at Ohio State, you went to UCLA and
Oh, God.
you were being interviewed, right, by Sam,
Yeah.
and she had mentioned that, or you had mentioned that you had danced for a choreographer that we know who has really revolutionized college gymnastics in regards to floor routines and performance, at least for the audience, in Miss Val. And
Mm-hmm.
having the opportunity to be mentored by her and to dance by
Mm-hmm.
her, can you talk about that and her mentorship to you and
Mm-hmm.
your journey as a coach as well as a choreographer?
Yeah, for sure. And I think you learn a lot from everyone, certainly that you're around or that you work with. Um, some of the greatest memories of my life were doing SeaWorld with Val and a lot of the other performers that I'm still keep in touch with some of them. So I think she taught me a lot of she put me in a lot of different sort of positions and dance elements that like I would not have given myself, right? When you choreograph for yourself, you stay in that comfort zone. But we had to learn some rhythmic gymnastics. We had to learn their clubs. And so just kind of really learn to stretch and grow and get out there. And she taught me to watch as much dance, go to as many auditions as you can. I'll never forget her telling me that. Even if you don't get the audition, hey, free dance class. So I used to go to things that I knew I had no chance of getting just for the experience and for stretching and growing myself. So that was something that I definitely learned from Val. I was fortunate enough to be coached by Greg Marston as well, talk about two very different philosophies. So it was great for me to have all the years I had with Greg and then 4 years at SeaWorld with Val. I go to them both for very different things, and I've been close to both of them really my whole coaching life. And both of them are super important to me. Just work ethic and just challenging myself in different ways. I know what kind of things I go to each one of them for. In fact, I just saw Val, I don't know, maybe about a month ago. I happened to be down in Arkansas and I went and had coffee with her and we talked about NIL and we talked about a lot of different things. So she's someone who's been a big prominent force in my life.
And talking about Pac-12, you had the opportunity, as you had just mentioned, to be coached by Greg Marston, as well as we just mentioned being mentored by another Pac-12 coach, like Hall of Fame coach, right? In Miss Val. Can you talk about being part of the Pac-12 and being at a prominent historic program, going up against another historic coach, right? And the environment that Pac-12 gymnastics kind of was at the time of you being a gymnast?
Yeah, I mean, it's gosh, and it's kind of sad, isn't it? That this is the last year of the Pac-12. My heart is hurting for all my friends out there. When I competed gymnastics back in the day, let's not say how far back, we were in the WAC and the Pac-10 at the time didn't really have a conference for gymnastics. So sort of watching that all come about and then getting to coach, and even now looking down at my Pac-12 championship ring that we won there, is like, wow, this is like a historic thing, that I have this Pac-12 ring. It was a really great conference. I think top to bottom gymnastically, the way they did things is very top notch, very cutting edge. The coaches were very, state of the art, wanting to push the envelope for our sport. So that in itself was a great thing to be part of. I think not only being on the team at Utah, but then going back and coaching with Tom and Megan, and just seeing what it takes to run a program like that, all of the different facets. It's not just about coaching. I mean, I would say coaching is only 30% of my job. Sadly, it's the part I love the most, but you're doing all of these other things. So that was a great learning experience for me, to have made friends there. And then, too, you can rely on your friends. I'm great friends with John Corda, Arizona. We've been friends for 20 years. Knowing that it's not your competition in your conference, but you can bounce ideas off of each other. Hey, how does your conference do this? Or, Tim Garrison down in the SEC, we were roommates when we were club coaches. I've known him forever. And so it's great to have all of those connections. Gymnastics is such a small community, but I really think, that being so close is what has allowed our sport to really expand, really feeling like you have faith in people and you're able to bounce ideas off of them, is what has been awesome for our sport.
In your time as a gymnast at Utah, what was something that you really enjoyed and what drew you to Utah? And we'll kind of dive into a little bit more of your history getting to Utah, but we're gonna go backwards. Let's start at Utah as a gymnast, and then we'll go from there.
Yeah, incredible. I've always told people you probably could have paid me, and I had a great high school experience, but you could have paid me, $100,000 and said, hey, homeschool, and I might have done it, but I don't think you could have given me any money in the world to replace my time at Utah with Greg and Megan. And was fortunate enough to have Jim and Meg Stevenson as well, and Aki Hummel. And I just had the best of the best of the best. I was really lucky and blessed. I think for me, I have a very strange story, just being a military kid who was out of the sport for 4.5 years. So my journey, like you said, we're kind of going backwards. Being at Utah, I loved the team, the camaraderie. Those were some of my best friends I still keep in touch with now, almost all of them. Certainly winning 3 championships in 5 years. They were all different. And I cherish all of those for a variety of reasons. But you miss just the silly things, the day-to-day. Like, I remember Greg turning 40 and us thinking it was so funny that we all wore black and we were mourning that he was 40, and just the little things that happen on the daily that you miss, and you'll see a picture and you'll remember this, remember that. I think mostly those are the memories that you cherish, the good, the bad, the journey of each year, and how different each each year is. So yeah, it was awesome.
And being able to have the experience of one, coaching where you are an athlete and being an athlete, both under the same person. Can you talk about that, and talk about, you had mentioned earlier when we were talking about Miss Val, how Greg was a mentor to you. Can you both talk about him as a mentor as an athlete versus a mentor as a coach, both now being the head coach at Utah, I'm sorry, being the head coach at Ohio State and being his assistant at Utah?
Well, actually, Greg retired right the season before I went to Utah.
Oh, okay, sorry.
So I had Tom and I had Megan Merson. So
okay, yes.
I had Megan while I was there, and it was funny because, there were a couple times where I had to remind her, Megan, I'm 40 years old now and I have 3 kids, and I'm not 20 anymore, and I've seen and done a lot. I know it feels like I was just here, but it's been a long time since I've been a gymnast. So it's kind of funny. I think it took her just a little while, maybe a couple months for that to really sink in. Yeah. The familiar face, but I've grown up a ton, at this point, but loved working alongside with Megan, and Greg was, he was hard on me. I think he saw something that I had been out of the sport for 4.5 years. I had a lot of talent, but not a lot of experience. And he pushed me hard. And I think I always knew that's why. And so I always, at the end of the day, knew that he was pushing me because he believed in me. And we always had that good relationship where I tried not to take it personally. But it was a hard road, being someone that just, on a team with Olympians and national team members. And I did not feel like, I kind of pushed my way in, but once I got there, I was very overwhelmed. Felt like I was just in over my head. And he never gave up on me. And I think he saw something in me, and I owe a lot to him, because I think Megan and Jim and Meg were very frustrated with me a lot that first year. I think they were ready to be done. She's just all talk and doesn't understand what this is all about. And I think they were very frustrated with me. And I think Greg was like, no, we got to give her some time. She's very green. We got to give her some time to figure this out. And so by the end, and this is a philosophy that I hold really true to my heart now too. By the end of my freshman year, once I saw what it took to win a national championship, and I did not get a ring that year, mind you. The team won the championship and I did not get a ring, which is something I tell this story a lot because that's unheard of now. You would never not give a ring to somebody on the team. And I don't tell that story because I want it. I don't feel I earned that ring. But I went home that summer and I busted my butt. I did tons of conditioning. I took private lessons. I came back in the gym the strongest I had ever been. I had 6 new skills and I earned a scholarship that next year because I understood it and I wanted my own ring. I wanted to earn a ring. So I've learned that as a head coach, sometimes you have to give athletes a year or 2 to really figure out what it's all about and give them that time to adjust. So sort of that's how he pushed me. And gosh, I was kind of an awkward freshman, and I don't think I was very well respected. You know, I was kind of this wannabe tag along. I wanted to wear my Utah Gymnastics sweatshirt all over campus, but I did not know how to push myself when my legs were sore and I didn't think I could go. So by the time, and I did redshirt my freshman year, I rolled my ankle, and among other things, I don't think I would have competed anyway. I wasn't good enough. But flash forward, 5 years, becoming a 3-time All-American and competing 3 events at different times for Utah, but pretty stable in the beam and vault lineup. And becoming a team captain and just really evolving as a person. I owe that, to the Marsdens and to Utah and all of the growth. And I was going around speaking to elementary schools about being drug free, and thousands of people I was speaking for. I don't think I could, if you would have told me that my freshman year, I would have never believed you that I would have gone out and done all these things. I was on radio shows and all these things. So it just changed my life 180 degrees. And I've always had the passion for gymnastics. I think that's the only reason I made it. I would be the last one to leave the gym because we didn't have limits on how long you could train. And it was like, here's Meredith stuck on beam again, can't get the assignment done. But every day I showed up, one of the first ones there, ready to go the next day. And I think that's something, again, I think the Marsdens saw in me the desire and the passion for gymnastics. And I think that's something Greg talks to me a lot about still now. If I try to call and complain like, hey, I'm not getting this. And then he'll say to me, hey, buck up there, camper, do it yourself, work harder, put your head down, so he gives me that tough love and tells me, you build it yourself. Let's go. You can do it. And he always tells me he's watching me. Even when I haven't talked to him for a while, he's like, just know I'm always watching you. So it's kind of that second father type figure. And Val is, again, like and Megan, like second mom, second big sister sort of figures to me. And I think that's something I really strive to be in my athlete's life too. So consider myself extremely blessed in my journey. And I think that's why I'm still so passionate about the sport today.
Right.
Yeah.
And you talked about how coming in under, the Marsdens, they seen you in a different way, right?
Mm-hmm.
And I think, this is one thing I believe is sometimes we need to get away from somewhere we're familiar, or that people are familiar with us, especially if they know us in a certain way, right?
Absolutely.
You'd kind of mentioned there's some areas where you probably weren't mature yet and you develop that maturity, right? And sometimes some people may have that memory of you and you have to go somewhere else to reinvent yourself almost.
Sure.
To be
Mm-hmm.
able to have them see that, or for you to even feel confident enough to present that side of you. Because
Sure.
it's almost like if I were to live at home and I want to become my own man, but I live at my house and I want to make certain decisions. If I always have my parents' influence on me to make certain decisions, I probably will make the ones that they would prefer or they would be more pleased with, rather than ones that I truly feel comfortable with.
Correct.
And we'll talk about this because there was time from the time you graduated, before you became assistant for 2 seasons, and you had some college experience, and we'll talk about your club coaching experience. And you had mentioned how you're married and you had kids and you had life that happened, but yet you went back there as an assistant and you were seen somewhat as still that same person you were when you were an athlete, right? And talking about proving yourself and proving how you can mature, but also being that complete athlete, one who's willing to go for what she wanted and to understand that there was a process of maturity, and not to just want something handed to you, like you mentioned in your first year, not getting a ring and feeling like you should deserve to, but yet taking that time and working on yourself to make yourself better. And you said it, earning your way to a ring, right? And being a contributor, being a captain, and being all those things. Can you talk about the life lessons that taught you and how you teach your current student athletes that as head coach of the Ohio State gymnastics program.
Yeah, and I think part of it too is everybody has to figure out who they are, right? And I think if we're not our authentic self, we're not going to be the best version of ourselves, right? And I think that was an area where, you know, the Marsden saw in me this silly, goofy freshman that didn't understand the work ethic, but also very passionate and a very caring person. I loved my team and whatnot. So I sort of became the one that could take the weight of the national championship or whatever the sticky situation was and sort of make light of it a little bit. That was sort of my role, and be the liaison between the coaches and the team and go, hey, you know, we're really struggling right now with X, Y, or Z, and being able to talk to the coaches because I had such a long journey. And I think I learned, I was really lucky. I also worked for Mary Wright, who was an amazing coach and choreographer, Olympic coach. I worked for her at a club right after college and learned very quickly in my career that I was not Mary and she was not me. And we worked very well together. But I was very fortunate to go, you know what? If I'm going to be the best coach I can be, I need to be who I am. I'm very sarcastic. I have a dry sense of humor. It didn't always work as well with the like 8 to 10-year-old group, but I'm not going to be the best coach I am if I'm in there trying to be somebody that I am not.
Right.
And so even today, you know, my team will be like, oh boy, here comes Mare with her joke of the day. You know, it's like, oh gosh, you know, if I can get a chuckle out of them every now and then, they're like, man, that one was pretty good, Mare. Good, like, good job. But I feel like that is something that I really try to teach my athletes. I'm going to be who I am, but I'm going to walk. I call it the scarlet and gray line. I don't want to impose my beliefs and my values on somebody else, but I want them to know that I grew into who I am and there was a process to it, and they've got to go through that process to find themselves as well too. And I think that's hard sometimes. I was lucky that I was able to do that in club and be sort of a head coach in club for a period of time, so that by the time I became a head coach, I already knew who I was. I already knew who my best self was going to be. I knew how to be a head coach, even though it was a little different in club and college. I think there are a lot of people that struggle in that transition from the assistant coach to the head coach. So I felt very fortunate that I was able to learn that pretty early on. That, yeah, I mean, I have ADHD, OCD. I probably have all the D's, you know, and this is who I am. And my assistant coaches will know, like, if I'm doing something, they're like, yep, we're waiting for you to make eye contact with us so we know you're actually hearing what we say. All right, you got it. You know, but I can hear 20 things. There are some pluses to having so many things going, because you can hear a whole bunch of things going on at once. So I think sort of getting through that period of my life and knowing who I was really helped me in the coaching world. Not try to be somebody else. Everybody else is taken. I got no choice but to be the best Meredith that I can be out there and try to be a better version of me today than I was yesterday. I think that's something that I try to just really teach my team.
Exactly. And I think that's a golden principle, to be able to do that. And for you to
Yeah.
be able to have walked through so much of it, you could be a prime example and understand most of the things that they're probably going to bring up. And we'll talk about even your journey being a military kid and what that did. But before we talk about that, you had mentioned you were a head coach at a club, and I've seen that you're a head coach at Sega. And can you talk about what that taught you being a head coach there and working with club athletes? And I think the other aspect I want to touch on too, as we're talking about it, since you have both experience being a club coach and a college coach, can you talk about how important that is to how you coach college? Because not every college coach has that. And I know, being a club coach and talking to other club coaches in the past, having coaches who went from being a college athlete to a college coach they
Mhm.
miss certain components,
Mhm.
and they feel certain types of ways when their athletes get to certain places and they get stuck, and they feel as though the coach cannot help their athlete get unstuck.
Mhm.
Usually what happens is that athlete gets sent back to their club during breaks or during the
Mhm.
summer, and to get their skills back to what they
Mhm.
were recruited to be able to do. So you having the experience of both developing athletes through club, both compulsory through elite, and
Mhm.
having college, being a college coach, can you talk
Mhm.
about one, your experience as a club coach, and then two,
Mhm.
how that translation helps you as a college coach?
Absolutely. So I think it was really vital for me. Um, I coached a year, so I did club for a couple years right out of school, and then I went to Berkeley for a year. Um, and I kind of knew during that time, like if I want to be the most effective college coach that I can be, I really think I need to understand how these skills work from the ground up. And so my sister actually owns Sega. So I went back and we coached together for 17 years, and it was great, wonderful. I think people were worried because we're very different. And people will still nowadays mix us up. They'll be at a meet and they'll walk up to my sister and go, "Hey, Meredith, wait, you look like Meredith." And my sister's always like, "Yeah, I'm Kathy, I'm the sister." But I think for me, that growth of how does a back handspring layout happen on beam? Well, it starts a long time ago, right? It starts from a level 4 back handspring on the floor. And do you get your shoulders open? Is your floor coach teaching you right? And then where do you split? How do you learn that back handspring step out? And what were the drills that you did? And all of these things. So I think it helps me tremendously being a college coach, where I've been able to, not just me, but my whole staff, my associate head coach and my assistant coach, all coach club. So I think it has been what has enabled us to take some kids that were maybe 9.6s and really hone in on the technical and get them to 9.85. So for me, I thought it was a very critical piece, and I enjoyed the heck out of my club days. I mean, I loved it, and we had 6 or 7 kids on the U.S. national team. Almost had an Olympian in 2000 with Rachel Tidd. And of course, she went on to world championships. And Coach Jamie Dancher's younger sisters, who are still, just dolls. They're out there in Arizona. And so I loved my time in the development phases of things. And I actually spent a lot of time coaching floor and vault, and shared beam with my sister. So, and actually a couple of years I did bars. But I think for me, if I were to recommend somebody, and I think there have been many people, I mean, Greg Marston was not even a gymnast, and nor was Val Condos, and they have been phenomenal coaches. So I don't want to put anything on whether you take that club route first or go straight to college. I think it's more about learning.
Yeah.
I think there are plenty of opportunities, but I think getting in the weeds and doing compulsory and learning. I also danced ballet for a long time as well. So I think that perfectionist, the fact that you could stand there in a passe for so long and just try to be perfect posture. Those kind of things I think have really helped me and our program. I don't want to diminish what anybody else has done, certainly,
Right.
but I think it has done wonders for us. And when the code changes, I feel confident in my staff's ability to like, okay, well, we got to teach a new beam dismount, or we got to start upgrading some bar dismounts, and we feel like we have the confidence and the ability to do that. But I also think, like you said, where it comes in really handy is if a kid just has either been out with an injury and they're like, this feels so funny, I don't know what I'm doing wrong. I have 50 drills for a back handspring layout. We will find one that's going to help you. And so we spend a lot of time in the fall doing a ton of drills. And then I feel like during the season, some days it's just you do the drills that help you, because you know best of my drills, which ones you like best. And again, that's the bonus of recruiting too. You go around to some of the top clubs in the country, and I'm still learning new drills. So I think it's a journey of continuing to learn and grow and help improve people. And one of the things I love in college is watching a senior do better and get better. When they're still passionate and they still want to improve their gymnastics the last year, heck yeah, I'm all in. I'll come in early, I'll stay late, whatever it takes, because I think that is an awesome thing. So I recommend it to my athletes that want to be coaches to start in club, but I certainly don't think that it requires that. We actually have a 22-year-old on our staff now that Luke used to coach back in the day when she was little, and she just graduated and has come and she's asking a lot of questions and a lot of technical questions and learning a ton, but she's going to be a phenomenal coach. And I don't and she's coached a little bit of club, but I think she's going to be a phenomenal college coach. So I don't think there's any one route, but for me, I think it was the route to go.
No, absolutely. And I like how you mentioned that there's multiple ways to be able to get there and not
Absolutely.
always having to go the club route and to be able to be a phenomenal coach. And also there's other people who haven't had experience with gymnastics personally. They did other things, either other sports, or they're just involved in different facets of life, and they brought who they were to the sport. And the biggest thing is that they kept learning and made it work through the process of learning. Right.
Well, and I think too, even more so than the technical, right? Gymnastics is all physics. Everything's on YouTube. You can go learn how to teach a pullover. You can learn how to teach a giant. You can learn how to teach a takachev. In my opinion, it definitely comes down to the relationships with the athletes, planning, and details. And, are you willing to go the extra mile to plan and to do the things necessary and to build the relationships? Because you can only coach an athlete as hard as your relationship is strong with them. And so I feel like if you don't have those relationships, you can have the information, but there's like a barrier. It's not getting through. So I think, and to me, that's the most fun part anyway. I love getting invited to weddings and baby showers and seeing it's amazing, so I think that's the best part.
And that's important and really ironic because on my Instagram, I just posted a video when I did another podcast with another individual. His name is Jason Falco, but he goes by the Mindset Guru. And a lot of what he does, he trains athletes how to be able to use their mind in different ways. And a lot of gymnastics as well, how you mentioned it's physics, is also being able to, one, pay attention, and it's mental, right? And so that's a lot of what he tries to target. And he uses tennis balls as one of those things to do it. So what he does is he'll throw a couple tennis balls, and a lot of it is like ball related. It seems like it's ball related sports that it's benefiting, but I think it benefits all athletes, even gymnastics. So he'll throw these tennis balls, and he starts all his training sessions by having them catch 20 in a row. So they have to catch 20 without dropping them. And what he does is as they evolve, he starts to add different elements. Like he'll take playing cards and he'll flip the playing card. You have to say what number it is and catch the ball. And then he'll add different elements. He might ask you different questions. He might ask you as you're throwing, hey, what's 3 + 3? What's 4 divided by 2? He'll ask you questions to now be able to have your mind, yes, focus on the right things. And one thing he mentioned in the podcast was that he wants to help athletes be able to make the right decision. And sometimes we know the right decision to make, but yet we have this other thing that pops up that we almost a default. And being able to make the right decision that in your mind and the time that you need it. A lot of times in gymnastics that happens, right? Say you go round up back handspring, you're tumbling, and I have a high back handspring. Some may make the decision to continue to do the following skill and do the double back. But if you know gymnastics, which a lot of these listeners do, if you have a high back handspring, you're about to do a double and you commit to it, most times that double may end up short because you went too high, so the double is going to go low, right? Where some people, if they understand what the right decision is and they're locked into what's happening, they'll take that high back handspring and they won't flip the double. They'll keep it safe, right?
Or I'll take it a step farther.
Yeah.
They realize the back handspring's high, so they try to block it as far behind them as they can to change that trajectory so they can still get height on the double.
Yes. And these are making the right decisions, right?
Right.
And a lot of times it's not, and I say this is a lot of times, in my personal opinion, is we use the physical elements of our sports to teach our mind what it really needs to do, right? That's really conditioning. Yes, you're
Mhm,
training your body what position and shapes are. But
mhm,
when condition becomes hard, it's not really about training the body what it needs to do. It's training the mind to stay consistent and focus on what needs to happen. Because there's going to
sure.
be elements of endurance where things get
Right.
hard, right? Where there's going to be times you may not feel the best. There might be times where you're competing not at an ideal time and you don't know how your body will respond, but
Mhm,
mentally you can stay locked in and allow yourself to go. And the conditioning that you did and the reps that you did trained your
right.
mind to be able to stay in, and that's
Yep.
where we tell our athletes all the time to make sure those warm-up times, those conditioning times are super important and we're
Yep.
locked in. And going back
Absolutely.
to that mindset guru, it's super important to really find those things to keep challenging. And he keeps adding things to it. So once they get it, he doesn't just go, all right, you have it, and
Mhm,
it's done. He adds elements. He still uses those same tennis balls. He'll bounce them off the wall, tell you to say a color over here, flip a card over, and you still have to catch these balls and be able to make the right decision in what is said on that wall, what the card says, and focus on catching the ball,
love it.
right?
Yeah.
And in our sport, a lot of times we talk to our athletes about two things: feeling or seeing things, right? And a lot of times gymnasts talk in, I felt this, I feel this. But as coaches, a lot of times we are trying to teach them to use their eyes to see things. Hey,
Mhm.
can you see where you are in the air? Can you know when that landing is coming? Do
Right.
you can you understand these positions because you can feel the shape? Can you feel
Yep.
where the low bar is going to be? Can you feel when to tap or whatever it is on the flick leg? Can you see your leg coming down before you finish? All these
Yep.
things. And sometimes they're going to be distractions. Some clubs have beams that are 7 lined up in a row. If someone
Oh
else
yeah.
is doing their own series and they fall and you're throwing your series, are you going to be distracted by them and you fall?
Or an
Right?
entire fan base heckling you while you're up there.
Exactly.
It happens
And
100%.
and so I think a lot of these things are super important to be able to help these athletes with and to build, right?
Absolutely.
And even talking about mindset, you said you're a military kid. Can you talk
Mhm.
about what that journey was and how that kind of influenced you? And you also mentioned you were out of the sport for 4 years. Was that related to being a military kid or was that related to an injury?
Yeah, no, that was definitely related to being a military kid. So my dad got stationed in the middle of the desert and there was no gym. And I guess my options would have been like going to Scats or going to Caroli's. And he said, you know, there's no gold medal that's worth losing my child until you're 18. You're going to live in this house. So it was tough, quitting the sport for 4.5 years. Was hard. I'm sure I said some things to them when I was coming out of sixth grade, like I hate you and you're running my life or whatever I said. But I had a great experience during those 4 years off. I um, did equestrian. I did 3-day eventing and hunters and jumpers and found a love of horses. I ran track. I was a cheerleader. So I did a lot of things that a lot of gymnasts don't get to do. So for me, it was great. But once I was like back to gymnastics, it was like full throttle, 6 days a week. Ended up getting stress fractures in both shins because I came back way too fast trying to, get to college quickly. But I think the military, a couple things. It makes you close to your family because you're moving around a lot, and that's what you have at the beginning.
Yeah,
Till you make friends, your siblings are what you have.
right.
But I also think, I feel blessed and lucky. Some people never leave their hometown their whole life, whether they want to or not. The fact that I've been coast to coast and seen 48 out of 50 states, most people don't see that in their lifetime. So I've always looked at it as a new adventure and something new, exciting, another new chapter, and that's exactly what I told my kids because, college athletics isn't always that stable either. So we talked about that, every new chapter is a new adventure and it's a new journey. And like you were saying, chance to reinvent yourself if you want to, or continue the growth in who you are. So I think for me, it was a blessing. It was the only life I knew, and it's funny, I always thought I would marry someone that, wore a uniform, because it was just what I knew. But yeah, I think it definitely shaped me into who I am. I think it makes you outgoing. I can pretty much talk to a rock. People will say that. But, I think there's a lot to be said to making friends everywhere. It's fun to go to, we were at NCAA's, and a friend of mine from Camp Pendleton Elementary School was there at NCAA's with their Ohio State shirt. And I see her every now and again, sometimes at high school reunions, because we went to the same high school, but not at the same time. But we've known each other since 5th grade. So I think it's fun knowing that you have friends everywhere. The first person I became or knew I was coming to Columbus is a friend of mine from 29 Palms, California. And we've known each other since 7th grade. And the minute I put the Ohio State logo on my Facebook, before I even told anyone, he was like, message me, are you the new Ohio State head coach? Are you coming here? And here we are, thousands of miles away from where we went to middle school. But I think that's one of the exciting things in life, is that everywhere I go, I may have a friend in that state or that town. And I think that's fun. People are obviously really important to me, and I'm a big people person.
Yeah. And I can also assume that diversity is also something that you really cherish too, coming from seeing 48 states with 48 states worth of people, right?
Yep. Oh, yeah.
And being able to understand, right? And I'm sure that helps in recruiting too, just because a little bit about everywhere, and you may have some access here and there to be able to help with recruiting.
Well, yeah, and I think it also helps me cultivate a team where there's a place for everyone, right? Like, we got 50 states here. We're one of the most diverse countries in the nation. We should have room for everybody. And to be able to, it really teaches you to, appreciate everyone for who they are. And, it's life experiences and things that happen to you along the way that will sort of direct your pathways and things. But yeah, I think it's really built us a good culture here at Ohio State. And I think that's one of the things I would say I'm the most proud of at Ohio State. And I think as a head coach, I think that's probably maybe one of my best. I don't know if that's a quality, but I think it's one of the best things that I've been able to do.
Right. Now, Ohio State has its name in regards to popularity because of its football program, right?
Yeah.
And some may know, or a lot of people may know exactly where you guys are located. But for those who do not know, where exactly are you guys located in Ohio, or even in the United States, for someone who really may not know that?
Yeah, so we're located in Columbus, Ohio, which is the 14th largest city in the United States, which I did not know prior to coming here. What is so cool about Columbus is that we're about 500 miles from everything good, which I had no idea. I mean, you can get to Indianapolis, Chicago, the Great Lakes, Niagara Falls, DC, New York, Nashville. I mean, I had no idea the amount of places that we were going to be able to see, just with a car. So it's a really kind of a cool location. It's really drivable from the entire East Coast of the country. It's 12 hours to Florida. It's 8 hours, 8.5 to a beach. In North Carolina, in case people think I'm lying, you can get to North Carolina in about 8.5 hours. So it's a really cool location, and it's just north enough that we don't get the humidity of the South. I know everyone wants to go to the South, but man, in June, July, and August, I'll take Columbus any day. We live outside here from about May till Halloween. We don't get that humidity. The weather is amazing. And then we're just south enough that we don't get that lake effect on the winter time. So like I said, we kind of have mild seasons, but you get a white Christmas. I think we've probably had 50-50, maybe 3 or 4 out of 7 that we've had some snow. So I love it. I think it's a really cool town, and the state of Ohio is built on, we have more cities per capita than any other state. So it's like a city, a suburb, farmland, and then the next city and suburb, or farmland suburb to the next city, so you can be in our campus a mile and a half to downtown and you can go see a major sporting event or concert. And in 15 minutes, you're out in a farm in a corn maze. So it's been really fun to raise my kids here for the last 7 years. And I think it's a very unique college experience to be able to have all of those different things. Plus, obviously, amazing college sports as well and spirit.
Right. I'm going to kind of ask an obvious question. Does the city revolve around the university, or the university revolve around the city, because of how big you say it is, but also knowing that Ohio State, at least in sports, and I also know that there are some programs and universities that are big in regards to known across the world, or even just across the country, but yet the campuses are really not that big in regards to how much it's spread out, but also just the population of students and student athletes. Is Ohio State kind of talking about, the dependency on the city and the university? What's also the size of the university, both undergrads, students, and student athletes, if you know?
So I don't know which came first. What I would say is, if you're looking like a college town, we are not per se, right? Columbus is a thriving city with an amazing downtown, tons of commerce. We're headquartered for L Brands, which is Victoria's Secret, Pink, Abercrombie, Nationwide is here, so there's many, many Fortune 500 companies that are based here. So we don't need the university. However, we are very closely linked. I mean, you try having a kid's birthday party on the weekend of an Ohio State football game, nobody's coming. I've got a daughter with a fall birthday. Can't happen on an Ohio State game day. It's just not going to happen. Nobody's going to come. So whether they're dependent, I'm not sure, but are they linked very closely? Absolutely. I mean, just absolutely linked. And it took a little while before, people can recognize you around town and whatnot, but they love their sports teams and they know their people around here. So they're both very large. Our city is big. Our school is big. If you are looking for a teeny tiny school, we are not that. I cannot convince you to come to Ohio State, but what I can tell you is part of the reason our campus is so big is that we have many of our graduate school programs located on our campus. So our law school, nursing, vet school, PT, dental, all of those are on our campus. So if you're an undergraduate, it's very easy to tell our recruits, like, this is the main area that you're going to be in. And it really does shrink down. And then you've got the athletic district, which is like, here's where you're spending the majority of your time is in this athletics, sort of district. So I believe we have about 60,000 students. I'm not sure what the ratio is. I would say probably 45 and 15. I could be off on that. And I think we have about 1,200 student athletes. But interestingly, having this been my fourth university, I feel very close to the coaches here. It feels like a very tight knit. I can call any head coach, and I've called Ryan Day saying, oh man, I got 5-star recruits. Can you please come meet them? I feel very tightly bonded to the coaches here that we, would ask a favor and give a favor to anybody. And they do a really good job of bringing us together for head coaches meetings. There's assistant coaches meetings. There's many activities for the student athletes. So it is big, but it doesn't necessarily feel big, if that makes sense.
Yeah. No, for sure.
I feel really close to people, and it's not, Gene Smith is not about a rotating door of coaches, right? There are people that have been here over 20 years, and not just coaches, people in the department that have just been here for a long time. So I feel like you really get to know people, and they've been here and are very loyal, and they've been here for a long time. So it feels like home.
Community is something super important, I think. And like you just mentioned, having a community of head coaches that really are you could access them pretty easily, right?
Yes,
And
yes,
and especially with a program that's top 5 in football, sometimes it's hard to access some coaches, right? And being
right.
able to connect together to help with some of the recruiting and all that other stuff, I think is really
Yes,
important.
yes.
And one of
And
the
again, you don't overstep your bounds, right? You pick and choose when you're going to bother somebody who's as busy as a head football coach. But certainly, we all have a really great relationship here. It's something that was one of the reasons I came here. I was so impressed with the people and just the leadership from the top down here.
And I know one of the things that athletes look for a lot of times, especially back in the day, is all the glitz and glamour, like the facilities, what the gym looks like, the locker rooms. We kind of
Mhm,
talked about the athletic kind of department and what all they have to offer. But
mhm,
nowadays, there's this new thing, sort of new, called NIL. And we had mentioned it just a little bit and we talked about it off camera. But let's
mhm,
discuss this a little bit on camera. With it being such a prominent thing, and for those who may not know, Ohio State is part of the Big Ten, and it's actually the biggest gymnastics conference in the country, and it's
mhm,
about to get bigger, as you had mentioned, with the Pac-12 no longer to exist, in having more teams enter, like UCLA is going to soon enter
right.
the Big Ten. And in saying that, you had also mentioned that there's a lot of Fortune 500 companies that
Mhm,
is headquartered in Columbus. Now,
mhm,
what does that do in regard to NIL and for
mhm.
future student athletes, specifically in gymnastics?
Yeah.
Does Ohio State have a lot of those opportunities to present to athletes,
Mhm.
or or are there a lot of athletes already coming into their recruiting process with some of those deals and relationships that they've already made going
Yeah.
into their process of wanting to be part of Ohio State's gymnastics program?
So, and that's a long, this is like a 7-part question, but I
I'm
have
sorry.
not had anyone who has already had a deal coming in. I don't think. What I would say is, NIL is here whether we love it or not. I won't say whether I like it or not, but we're here and we're in it. There are many opportunities here. I have lots of athletes. It's pretty easy to get a deal here. Um, what type of deal you're looking for really depends on who you are. I would say, as we're moving forward in this process, schools need to define themselves like who are you? Again, I feel like being my authentic self is the best way that I can lead. I'm not spending the majority of my time looking for NIL deals for my athlete. I want to get to the national championship. I'm trying to figure out how to coach the best team, how to get them the most support that they can. And then, more importantly, I'm trying to make sure that every person that graduates my team has a job or is placed into graduate school, med school, PT school. That is my top priority. That in the longevity of life, my athletes have a career path that they are excited about. There is no professional gymnastics. I mean, right, there's SeaWorld and things like that, but it's not like the NFL. So I know for myself, one of the reasons I'm still involved in this is this was my passion. I didn't want to do anything else, but I feel like it's my job to make sure that I'm helping my athletes figure out who they are. They're many things. They're not just Susie the gymnast. They have all these different qualities. I want them to be as excited for the next chapter as they were about coming to Ohio State. So a big chunk of what we do is prepare our athletes for a career. And that's one of the things that drew me to Ohio State. It's very unique. And in being here for 6 years, I've had 100% of my graduates placed either into a graduate school program or having a job. Many of them will be placed already before they're even graduated. I just had a senior get hired a little while ago, so that'll be coming up on social media. But having said that, I understand that it's a big part of what is out there and what's going to land me big recruits. But I also want to stay true to who I am. So we have an amazing staff at Ohio State, luckily, and we're not allowed to really be involved as coaches with NIL deals. We have an entire staff here that is dedicated to NIL. So I feel like if you come here and that's all you want to focus on is your brand, we've got people here. You can focus on your brand and take off. $10,000 deals are not hard to come by out here. I don't know what it's like in other places because we do have such a big city. But I think it's about what you are trying to do as an athlete. Are you trying to get the most out of the last 4 years of your gymnastics and you're preparing for a PT school? Or are you in the digital space and you're trying to create your brand and you might be going more down that pathway? So I feel like we have a great balance here. I'm surrounded by great people. And I feel like we're probably somewhere near the middle to top when it comes to NIL and what's available and what we have out here. So I have not seen it as a negative to me. It's not distracting my team from what our goals are, but it has certainly been great for some athletes to really, especially some walk-on athletes, to really help them get some cash and pay for some things. So it's been a really positive experience for us. And I think partly that's the way that my university is handling it. But yeah, I mean, it's another layer of things that you've got to, as a head coach, you're working on, marketing and fundraising and all these different things each day or each week that you're checking off before you go home. And NIL is one of those things where you're like, okay, what have I done for NIL today? What do I need to focus on? I just set up a meeting, to see where we're at with some things. So it's another facet to the wagon wheel of responsibilities that we have. But I think it's a disservice to your athletes to say, hey, I'm here to win a national championship and we're not even looking at that. I think that would not get me maybe the very best athletes. So we want to be open to it. So I feel like we have a great situation here at Ohio State.
And I know a lot of NIL deals is about value. What value can you provide for whatever business?
Mm-hmm.
And also having your name attached to a certain sport, in this case, gymnastics. Can you talk about what it does in regards to benefit eyes on the sport of gymnastics? And I know more eyes are on it with more TV deals and stuff like that. But specifically, can you talk about what you've seen or experienced at Ohio State that NIL deals have done for bringing more attention eyes to the sport of gymnastics at Ohio State?
Yeah, I mean, just right off the top of my head, watching an athlete film a commercial and the people filming and the business just loving her. She was such a personable person. I see them commenting on our social media now. I see them following us and they've become fans of not only this athlete, but our team and our sport. So I feel like these athletes are becoming ambassadors, right? They're promoting a product that they use and believe in, whatever it is, even if it's a food that they're refueling after practice. And it is pulling other people in who maybe are attached to that label and things like that. So I don't think it's all bad. I think it is 50-50. I think there are some things, and I certainly think that some legislation needs to pass in terms of some aspects of it. But I definitely think it is helping our sport. I mean, that's what we want. We want people to know our sport and to become fans and see what we do. And, to the layman, they cannot necessarily tell the difference between a double-double and a full in. My husband, who knows nothing, thinks it all looks like that. It's like it's that. Some look like that and some just flip. And I'm like, yep, you're right. This is someone who's been married to the sport for 25 years, and he still struggles with certain things, but he's a huge fan of the sport. He loves to try to watch college meets and score them. And he's a huge fan now. So I think that the NIL, if we can play this right, it can be very good. And I certainly understand the basis of it for some of these athletes who may get injured before their professional time. When you're looking back at football, basketball, baseball, you certainly can understand it. Is it my favorite thing? Does it make my life easier? Not necessarily, but this is where we are. So you, like anything, you can choose to be negative about it, or you can choose to embrace it and have a positive attitude and try to, do the best you can to use it in a very positive way. And that's what we've tried to do here. And I think it's been a good thing for us.
One area I feel like it could be interesting, and this is just from my perspective, is being a walk-on. I wonder if that changes how the walk-ons either decide to go somewhere. Is if, because sometimes a lot of, if they may not be at the caliber of athlete to compete for a spot, either through scholarship or even to compete for a spot on the lineup currently, maybe if they can bring other value to the program, I could see it being something where walk-ons are having something else to offer. Because I know sometimes with some programs, academics could be a benefit to a program. And so that walk-on is valuable in that way. But also, where it could be, and again, this is me assuming, tricky is, say I'm a walk-on who may not be of the caliber to be able to compete right away and earn a scholarship, but yet I am at the caliber to walk on and you'd offer me. But I wanted to play the game because, one, finances may be a thing. And maybe I have already a following going in because I might be in the digital space where I have a following on social media and stuff like that. And I'm going to bring that with me as I go.
Sure.
Do you foresee seeing that becoming a thing where competing for walk-ons becomes a tricky place because of NIL specifically?
I mean, that's the nail on the what is it? The head on the nail? Hit the nail on the head. I mean, you're seeing that already. And I think, and I don't know if I'm speaking about things I shouldn't. So hopefully, Gene Smith, if you're out there, he's a busy man. Hopefully he's not watching this. But I think that where it can get tricky is with the collectives, right? That's where it can be tricky. If you're a walk-on and maybe you're still fighting for a lineup spot, but you have notoriety because you have a social media following, I think that's great for our sport, right? We're getting someone on a team that the world already knows, right? Many more people know gymnastics right now because of Livy Dunn. That's great. Where it gets trickier is if you are basically doing these bits of things to get this collective money, which can almost equal a scholarship, and you're sitting the bench on a team where you could be really contributing at another team. And now this, some teams could have people riding their bench that would be a 3-event person at Ohio State. How does that roll? And I think we're seeing that not just with gymnastics, maybe with football and basketball and things. And then then that bleeds into the transfer portal and all of these things. And they're very tricky. And so that's where I just sort of try to stay in my lane and let my athletic directors go fight those battles, because I feel like they just are so much more knowledgeable about what's happening. I really know what's happening in my sport. I really don't know the ins and outs of football because I'm not a football coach or basketball or baseball. You know what I mean? So at this point, I don't see it being a negative, but you're absolutely right. You could see people taking walk-ons simply because of their following. You could see people sort of using collective money to give money by doing work for the collective to a 1-event kid that they really want, who's maybe not worth a full scholarship, but now this kid is almost getting a full scholarship, and those things are certainly probably happening. And so it's sort of like, how far down this rabbit hole does it go before it stops? And so you play the game until the game can't be played anymore, right? And that's, I think, where everybody's at, I think, in every sport. So I think at this point, I'm trying to play the game the best way I know how and do it with integrity and fairness to my team, and still not compromise who I am. I'm not a big glitzy, we're not about but divas, and I always tell my recruits, we are not raising divas here. We are here to be humble and hungry and kind, and we're here to get ready for life. And oh, by the way, we also would like to get to the national championship. And so, every head coach has a different method to their madness. And so I'm trying to play that NIL game as long as it doesn't compromise who I am and who I believe my program is, if that makes sense.
No, absolutely.
Did that answer everything? That was a lot of blah, blah, blah.
Yes. And I apologize. I'm terrible because I have a lot of these thoughts in my head and they like intertwine my head and I just let it come out my mouth. I have to understand how to break them
you're
down.
right there with me. I feel where you're coming from, Alice. But there's not an easy answer to it. You could have, we're going against LSU next week. You could have Jay Clark on here and he could give you a completely different answer than I do. So I think it's just so very situational, not only with conferences, but different schools and different people,
Absolutely. And you had mentioned the type of program that you are. Can you kind of go over what are your pillars of things that make a Ohio State gymnast under the leadership of Meredith? What does Ohio State gymnast, one, need to bring in, two, need to maintain, and need to really become when they are at Ohio State or even interested in becoming part of the Ohio State Gymnastics Buckeye family?
Well, I think number one is integrity. That's the number one pillar for us. We pride ourselves in being a team who, I think our little mantra is a team who walks forward with a grateful heart, one skill at a time, and with integrity. So I think integrity is it for me. I can help anybody through almost anything. I've seen a lot in my days with college kids. We're all learning and growing and we make mistakes, but you have to have integrity and honesty or we can't get over that, I think the second thing we're looking for here is somebody that still loves gymnastics. We train hard. We're trying to take this program to the next level and we're very honest about that. But we also have a lot of fun while we're training too. I think training hard and having fun doesn't have to be a separate thing. And you can bust your butt and also it can be a game. So I think, but if you don't love gymnastics and you've burned out and you think college is the silver bullet, I think that's where some people get into some trouble because it's still a lot of work. Freshmen are always shocked when they come. They're like, man, I didn't, 20 hours a week. You don't think it's going to be that hard, but we work very hard here. So I think if you don't love gymnastics, that's something that's going to be hard for you to get through here at Ohio State. I think family is really important to us here at Ohio State. And, when I have a bigger team than a smaller team, it's like the mom heart expands and it's more people to love. We did not look at that as oh gosh, we got the years we had 23 people was like, yay, more fun, more friends, more family. And then I just think gratitude and work ethic. Those are things that I'm really, about sort of the Rocky Balboa Midwest mentality. Family values are sort of where we're at here. And I think that, that's what has gotten us where we are in the 7 years that we've been here. I think that being honest and forthright, that's probably one of the reasons we haven't had anyone in the transfer portal. What you see is what you get. Like, this is me, take it or leave it. There's no sell here. I try to be as absolutely honest as I can with people so they know that what they're getting into. And I think that for most of our kids here, I think it's the time of their life. But I also think that we're doing something right to get them ready for the next chapter. I just had a couple alumni in the gym visiting and they came to our Scarlet and Gray and I said, do you miss it? And they were like, oh no, my body feels pretty good right now. I can't imagine running down that vault runway. But I love that they are smiling and still showing up to the gym and to the meets and still love gymnastics, but are ready to close that door and move on. That's something that makes the mom heart feel good for me is when I see them excited about that next chapter.
Yeah. And you have a staff that you had mentioned earlier. Can you talk about everybody on your staff, your coaches, and what their specific role and what they bring to the program.
Yeah, I mean, I think we're one of the longest tenured staffs now, which is crazy to think. I still feel like, I mean, I tried to tell Gene Smith I was new around here, and he was like, "What? You're in your second contract. You're not new." But it's just the time when you're having fun, it just flies by. So Luke Wasson is my associate head coach. We've all been here for 7 years, and Randy Monahan is my assistant coach. We all knew each other. I met Luke during my elite and development camp club days. So we met at the ranch and at all of those kind of meets. So I knew him that way. And Randy, I knew from when he was at Penn State. So just knew him from the college sort of ring. And when I got hired here, Randy reached out less than 24 hours later and said, "Hey, listen, I am a Buckeye. I would like to stay at Ohio State," and we had a conversation and really clicked. And it was a no-brainer to me that he really believed in what Ohio State could be, the level of the program here with football and a nationally prominent program. And he liked the things that I thought I was going to bring and said, "What do you think about these are the elements that I think we need?" And he was like, "Yes," super fired up about it. So we clicked really fast. We both wanted Luke. Of course, I was afraid to be told no, so I made Randy call him. I said, "You call Luke and see if he, is interested." And I kind of knew, like I said, I wanted some club coaches. I knew that at that time we were going to be coaching kids up. I mean, we had to teach a lot of bar dismounts and some new vaults and tumbling passes. And I've taught new beam series and all of those things. So I knew that that's the kind of staff I wanted to assemble. I don't think in the moment we knew exactly how well we would mesh. I mean, we are like an absolute family. I don't run the program as I am the head coach. And this, I've got a deck of head coaching cards. And every now and then I pull one out and go, "Hey, man, I'm going to put my head coaching card down. And you guys are going to do that." And I don't do that very often. We have many great discussions in my office and like to talk about things. And then it just, okay, where are we going to lunch now? Because we're all so passionate about the same things. And I love that we can have those kind of conversations. And then actually our strength coach has been here for 6 years as well. He is incredible. He came from the football side of things, but he's super sciencey. So of course the physics of gymnastics, I think, initially attracted him. He's been very into like Dave Tilley and that side of things. So really helpful with us on the injury prevention side of things. And so he's now been working with us for going on his 6th year. My trainer is now going on her 6th year. So I feel like we have a big family now. We know each other really well. My trainer knows when she needs to come over and say to me, "I need your face to stay exactly like it is right now, because I need to tell you something." And so I have to go, "Okay, what's going on?" So I just think that we work really well together and we balance each other out. I'm the primary beam coach. And I do all the choreography. Well, I got Miss Michaela Stuckey here now, our young assistant. She's a great dancer. So she's been helping with choreography as well. Luke coaches the leg events and has always done a phenomenal job of balancing who needs what on any given day. And then Randy is the bar coach. But Randy also coached the leg events for years. And I grew up in club coaching the leg events. Luke's coached all 4. So I think one of the things that's unique about our staff is we really work well together. I mean, Luke came up with a drill for me for beam dismounts this year. And I'm like, "Dude, why did you not tell me this 5 years ago?" It's really helping. And I just think the ego part of it is not there. We don't care who comes up with the idea. Just get the kid to hit.
Yeah.
Let's make the team as great as we can be. And it's worked out really, really well for us. And it's just been probably the most fun I've had coaching as well. Like we have so many inside jokes now, and even with our team. So it's been, like I said, the fact that it's year 7 is like, what on earth? How did that happen? So it's been great.
And do you allow your team to kind of have captains, or do you have a leadership committee to be able to help from that perspective? Because a lot of
Yeah.
times, both being an athlete and now being a coach,
Mhm.
that you need those leaders from within to really drive the team, because sometimes that's
Mhm.
where it's really driven or not, is if there isn't
Right.
people that
Oh.
are within the peer group that are able to step up and kind of either communicate or
Yes.
translate what you as coaches are saying
Mhm.
to their fellow peers and student athletes. So do you
For
have
sure.
that type of leadership, a captain, or do you do a leadership committee where you allow seniors, juniors,
Yeah.
sophomores, and freshmen to kind of have a leadership position?
We do something really unique, and I have never told anybody what we do publicly, to be honest.
And you don't
I
have
may
to. You don't
I
have
may
to.
tell you some of it off camera, but
Okay.
we do have a leadership committee because here at Ohio State, we have a thing called Lead Like a Buckeye. So we try to make sure that everybody gets to do the Lead Like a Buckeye program. Usually a sophomore, a couple juniors, and a couple seniors, and they work with the top leaders of our university. They'll bring in military leaders, leaders of corporations. It's an amazing program. So we do have that leadership committee. And, in all reality, we know these athletes the best. They know us the best. So it is really important that you have those upperclassmen there to bounce things off of, right? We also do a big sis and little sis program. I think that's been really important for those freshmen coming in to feel like they have someone that they can ask questions and go get a coffee with if they're really struggling. And I'll use it sometimes. I'll grab a big sis and go, hey, so and so is really struggling on beam right now. It would be great if you could help me by giving her some advice on XYZ
Right.
or whatever the case is. And then we do some really unique things with our captain program. I think it's one of the most unique probably in the country. And I usually tell my recruits all about it. So I don't know if people would be talking about it online, but I think it's one of the best ideas. We just the first couple of years did captains the way everybody else does, just because that's what we all knew. And then after a couple of years, we kept thinking, gosh, what if we thought about something different than what we'd all been used to our whole lives? And
Yeah.
so, yeah, so I'll chat with you about that off camera, but
Love it.
I would love to keep it in-house for as long as I can,
Yeah.
just because I think it's so unique to our program. And it's one of the things that's really special about our program.
And in that, we kind of mentioned this a little bit when we talked about NIL stuff and
Mhm.
eyes on the program. Can you talk about your fan base and what it looks like competing, one, in the Big Ten, competing in Ohio with having so many big cities, but also
Mhm.
having a big city that you guys are in? What does it look like? What does it feel like competing at your arena? And what is your arena called?
So we have one of the newest arenas in the NCAA, the Covelli Center, and it opened up in 2020. So we got to go in there, I think, once or twice before we shut down. It's very new, state of the art, just gorgeous, and one of the newer hardwood floors that volleyball paid for. I don't know. What I can tell you is coaching in heels in there, my back doesn't hurt. So it's awesome. And I feel like a lot of people come and have like their best meet of the year. So it's good and bad for us, but it's a great arena. I think with the sellout capacity, we hold 3,800, but it's very intimate and the energy is phenomenal. I think one of the things I'm the most proud of is the fan base that we have built. When I got here, we had 11 season ticket holders, and I'm coming from Utah where we had 9,800. And I was like, 1,100? And they said, no, 11. And I was like, 11 people. I mean, do we send them Christmas cards? Who are these people? So it's taken some time. And then, of course, everything went backwards during COVID, but I'm really proud of the fan base that we built. I think they have become genuine gymnastics fans who love gymnastics now. And I think our student population is getting there as well. But we sold out our arena for the first time last year. So I was really excited about that for our athletes. We're getting to be one of those sports where, my assistant coach was just saying that his wife's parents were looking for season tickets and there just wasn't two together anywhere great, so we're getting there. I think we're close to 500 season tickets now. I mean, that's just gone a huge step. Last year, our goal was no less than 2,000 people at any meet, which we achieved. And so I'm really proud of that. And I feel like we have created an atmosphere that is super fun for our athletes to compete. It feels phenomenal to be in front of the home crowd. We've got the good tunnel that comes out. We have a platform that we copied from the Milwaukee Bucks, actually. But it's like all lit up and it shoots up CO2. So, we wanted it to feel more NBA sort of than like football or gymnastics. So it's been really fun building it. And like I said, I feel like they're starting to become really loyal and really knowledgeable. And we showed up to Oklahoma and some fans were there. Like we didn't even know they came, a family. And so we're starting to get a fan base that's wanting to travel. So I'm feeling like we're having to put that up now. Like, hey, if you are interested in going to regionals or traveling here, that's becoming a thing now. So it's been really exciting. Like Greg told me, it's very fun and rewarding to build it yourself. Not that it's not great to step into a program that's already got all that. So I don't want to diminish that, but it has been really rewarding and very emotional to see the arena sold out. Like that was just something I did not know if I would see that. I did not know if gymnastics would take here, and feeling like we're getting some traction on the Jumbotron at football games now, and getting asked to be on some of the local radio stations that are giving away tickets now, and things like that has been really awesome. And hopefully it will continue going in the right direction. I would love to build off of what Tim Garrison's done at Kentucky, where once a year when the team up north comes, or every other year when they come, once we're selling out Covelli, to be able to go in the big arena. And I think Arkansas did that last year too. We think we could, for that one meet, get the 10,000 fans with all the marketing people and have that once a year, and then stay in our home because we love Covelli, the rest of the meets. But yeah, I think the Big Ten has really changed since I came. Not because of me. I don't mean that to sound like that, but 5 new coaches came on board my year. And there's, I think, been one other new one since then. And everybody has been really, we all bounce a ton of ideas off of each other. What are your giveaways? How do you promote this? We are very good about sharing ideas in the Big Ten. Absolutely adore all of the coaches in the Big Ten. It's such an amazing conference of people to work with. And so to see everybody's attendance going up everywhere around our conference is phenomenal. And it's just been really fun and rewarding, I think, for us to all watch each other, build up the fan base, and for ESPN and BTN and these networks to want to pick us up a little bit more has been really fun. And I'm excited. That's one of the things I'm excited about with the big conference alignment, is that where will that take women's gymnastics? Will we, start getting a weekly 2 to 3 meets like the SEC? And that's what we're pushing for. So hopefully we'll be seeing that in the next couple of years.
Yeah, and I think it's kind of unfortunate that Big Ten hasn't been being the biggest gymnastics conference.
Yeah.
Right.
Keep saying that.
Because
put it out there.
Right. Because some of these other conferences, like the SEC, obviously in regards to sports, is probably one of the biggest sports conferences, and has a lot of the financials and stuff like that, because it gets a lot of TV time and stuff like that. But having, more teams, and even just now stretching out west in UCLA coming, bringing those fans, and
Washington too.
Yes, bringing them over, the West and the Northwest, and, there's already the East and the Midwest. Being able to have all these different regions coming into this conference, I'm excited to kind of see what it will look like and what
Yeah.
what it will bring, and be able to continue to elevate the sport of gymnastics. Because I think in this time, and I've talked to other people about this on some of the other podcasts, is even the aspect of seeing a lot of these student athletes and gymnasts going from their college career and continuing their career, especially with the Olympics coming up, and
Yeah.
competing for countries that they have, some ties to. Myself being Haitian, if I was a gymnast and having an opportunity to go and compete for Haiti as a gymnast after my college career has been super important, because now I think it's bringing more eyes internationally,
Yes,
to college
absolutely.
gymnastics, which I know has had in the past, but I think it's going to at a different rate, because you're
Oh, yeah.
seeing American raised athletes go and compete for their home country, which will now kind of bring more eyes back to where they came from, and hopefully be able to continue to bridge that gap between international gymnastics, but even just like elevate gymnastics internationally and have more countries
Yeah,
that are
all of it.
involved, right?
Absolutely. Well, and you have international kids representing their universities. You know what I mean? It's going both ways. So yeah, it's phenomenal. I mean, I'm a huge gym nerd, just because I'm not an elite coach anymore. I mean, I still follow all of that. I think gymnastics is great on every level. But yeah, I mean, I think it's all working together. And I just try to remind myself that Rome was not built in a day, and we have to keep nicely pushing for what we want. So I always try to, one of my Marisms, I got a whole bunch of Marisms. I'm sure at some point I'm going to get a book of them back. You know, is trying to compromise with people saying, hey, that's not really working for us. Like, let's come together and find a thing that's going to work for all of us, and really trying to continue the negotiations with BTN and with, other networks and things like that. I mean, being grouchy and pushy and that type of thing doesn't always work, but trying to just continue to be positive, but work for the good and keep saying, it's we would like to be on television more. We feel like our conference is amazing. And then taking it, knowing, hey, we picked up Peacock streaming. Okay, let's all go back and up our streaming game this year. Let's really show them we know how to stream. People don't care if it's regular TV or streaming, so long as it's good. They'll
Yeah.
watch it all. They'll watch things on YouTube. So we really went back and we're trying to up our streaming game this year. Let's see what kind of a show we can put on. So I think it's just looking for creative ways to continue to elevate not only our program here at Ohio State, but the Big Ten and women's college gymnastics in general. I think we're going in the right direction, and we just have to continue, fighting for the smaller guy, fighting for our D2s and D3s, while promoting the excellence that is, our NCAA tournament and things like that.
Absolutely. I couldn't agree more. Is there any nuggets or anything like that you want to leave with the listeners and viewers about yourself, about your program, or things that you're excited about for this upcoming season?
I mean, every season brings a new team and new challenges. I think you don't know what you're going to get until you get out on the floor and start a couple meets in, seeing what kind of team rolls. I enjoy the challenge each year because each team is different. Coming off of last year, one of my most veteran teams. I mean, they pretty much pulled us along, and so this year has been really different. But I love the challenge of each year. I think that what most people don't realize, and just the general population, is that they love Olympic gymnastics and they're always I mean, everybody watches it every 4 years. I think they don't realize how much fun a college gymnastics meet is to watch, that it's not very long, shorter than a basketball game. We try to be out of our arena in an hour and 45 minutes. If we can get done in an hour and a half, bonus to all my staff. But, I think that each fan that we pull in realizes what a great sport it is, the athleticism. There's never been better parity in college gymnastics right now. The amount of upsets and meets that are coming down to the wire is so exciting. And the format, once we took on sort of following the basketball format with 32, 16, 8, and 4. This has just done so much for our sport. I just couldn't imagine doing anything else. Have loved spending half my time in club, and am loving this second chapter. And just thank you so much for having me on and challenging me with some questions and sharing my story. And hopefully it will help some other people out there that maybe are thinking about walking on. One thing I would say is that there's a place for everybody in college gymnastics. If you love the sport, even if it's that you're a manager, I mean, our manager is part of our family. We absolutely love her. There is a place in college gymnastics for everybody. So hopefully this podcast is helping a lot of young people to realize that dream.
Yeah. And I appreciate you coming on and talking about those things. And I know some of these topics like NIL and even transfer and stuff like that are kind of hard topics, but I think these are the questions that people are really asking. These are real things that are going through people's minds and real things that are being faced, and having some understanding of it and knowing how to navigate it, and having conversations about, like you mentioned, the game that is being played, and knowing how to benefit, because again, we want to create value in people's programs and people's lives. And as you mentioned too, how you have 100% success rate in regards to postgraduate jobs, or even postgraduate, schools. And I think that's one of the most important pieces of this, is having that. And if some of these NIL deals help you, financially, personally, or your families and stuff like that, I think those things are important. So I appreciate you talking about that and being your authentic self. Yes. And being your authentic self.
I think the other thing I would say is, I think one last little tidbit would be, the more questions as a gymnast who is going through the recruiting process, the more questions they ask, the better idea they're going to get. I always encourage athletes, when they go spend time with my team, ask them what's going to make me angry. Ask them what are the things that are going to get you a little meeting in my office, or, what's the best thing about me? What's the worst thing about the program, about me, about, getting that full picture is so important, because I think sometimes with the transferring, they don't know exactly how it is, and just really asking a ton of questions to make sure. I mean, we've all got the bling rooms and the new matting and the pretty gyms and, those types of things. But at the end of the day, you want to get the most accurate picture of what you're looking at. So I think sometimes there are athletes that don't ask as many questions, and you're not going to know if you don't ask. I think some of my best recruiting conversations are the kids that are like, sorry, I just have 5 more questions for you. And we're like, great. Love that you're asking. We want to answer as many questions as we can to help these kids make the right decision, so they are not forced with the transfer portal.
Yeah. And I think that's perfect, because this podcast is wanting to address that and aiming for those student athletes, or just student athletes in general, who are interested in the sport of gymnastics and continuing, and being able to know how to navigate it. Because I think it is a daunting process to know, both for the student athlete, for the coach, for the parent, what type of questions to ask, what's appropriate, what's inappropriate, and to kind of really prepare themselves to be able to make the proper decision, because it isn't an easy decision. You're making a decision that could potentially be that you have to live with. Well, now with transfer portal, you can do more stuff, but ideally for the next 4 to 6 years, depending on the process and what happens with that. Right. And being able to make the right decision for you with the people that you feel like you can give the most value to, but also will bring the most value to you, and who care about you, not just for what you offer, but who you are as a person, and what you're going to be able to contribute to your community, to your university, to your teammates, and to the staff that is, honored and blessed to be able to have you be a part of their program. Right.
Yes. And I think there's no dumb questions. I think people are afraid to ask all the nitty gritty questions. And it's like, listen, if I can't answer it right now, if you want to ask me where you are in my list, I might not have an answer for that. But if you want to ask me, what does it take to make my beam lineup? That's easy. Or what are the things I'm looking for in a beam worker or things like that? I think most coaches are very willing to give that information. And so are student athletes. When you go on those recruiting trips, they're your best asset. They'll, I don't think, I think at least for my team, I always tell them to be honest. We don't want anyone here that doesn't have an honest picture of who we are. So I think that's, and like you said, there are some gyms, that have been recruiting kids to college for decades when you're talking about Hills Gymnastics and, some of the Texas, but that doesn't mean every parent has been through this process yet.
Yeah.
Or every athlete has been through this process yet. So I would definitely encourage parents and athletes to ask as many questions as you need to get an accurate, picture of who are these coaches, and what is this program all about, and things like that. So I think, the better job that you can do on that, the more real snapshot of the program, you're going to get. And if you can visit the school more than once on your own dime and see it at camp and for another unofficial and come to a meet, all the different things, so you can see these coaches and athletes in different environments. I think that helps too.
Yeah. Well, thank you everybody for tuning into another episode of Heated Conversations. I am super honored that Meredith decided to be able to be a part of this podcast and talk about her awesome program, and leading off with integrity, and having an honest conversation and being real, and not being afraid to ask the questions that you may perceive being silly questions or hard questions, and to have a true depiction, because in your mind you're already thinking it anyways. So it's better to say it, get the real answer, so you can make the best decision for you. Again, thank you for tuning in. Subscribe, share, like, leave comments. See you guys on the next episode.